Hey, hello there. My name's Israel Hilligeist, and I'm excited to share with you a very focused and powerful approach to learning and development, and then some stories about how powerful taking this approach can be in terms of business results, culture, engagement, and all those wonderful type of things that we're trying to facilitate through our learning interventions. And the main thing can be captured in just a statement or two. To do training that makes a big impact, we need to discern what do our learners need to do, and then we need to give them practice with feedback until they can do it. Now, that sounds so simple, but really, a lot of times, in my experience, we focus so much on what they need to know and not just like what they need to know, like this much on what they need to know and this much on what's nice to know or what's interesting to the instructor or the subject matter expert to know. But if we let what they need to do drives what they need to know, then we've got a really focused, tight solution. So, a couple examples of when I've taken this type of approach include once I was at a Fortune 50 company in a high tech manufacturing environment. And probably like most high tech environments, this was run by the engineering team. We had a number of Stanford master graduate degrees in engineering, 10 of them running, being responsible for this one high tech line. And then we had a whole productions crew, operators and technicians with community college degrees and operators with maybe GEDs. The vision was, can we equip the production staff to assume complete ownership of the line from the engineering team? Now, this was kind of a visionary supervisor who had this idea. I cannot convey how revolutionary it was. Yet, he had this vision and I got to get on board with them. And there were two projects I did that are relevant to our discussion today. One was process improvement teams. So that's a big part of a manufacturing environment. I researched and put together a process that incorporated the best of technical problem solving tools and team problem solving tools. And then our lead operators were going to facilitate these meetings, meaning they were going to run these meetings with technicians in them and other operators. So they were very intimidated by this. In that world, the technician is king. And so what we did was, I taught them the steps to facilitating this process, but I didn't just end the class and throw them out there. We role played that for hours. And I committed to each one of them. I will role play this with you until you tell me you're ready. And if you want me to come and facilitate the first meetings and you participate and then you facilitate and I'll be there and be your safety net and then you tell me when to go, whatever it is. But I'm not going to put you out there until you know you can do it. So we practice and practice. They went out there and did it. The first meeting, they solved a problem that saved them $300,000 a month in scrap. And they were elated. Long story short, the whole project was a success. Production took over the line. They got it running better within 2 months than it ran the whole time. But the point I really want to point out is we had a great process for how to facilitate a team, but they practiced it and got feedback and practiced it and got feedback. And that is what enabled them to go out there and be successful right off the bat. Another part of that project was we wanted our technicians to perform better. Technicians troubleshoot the line. When something's not working right, they got to figure out what it is and fix it. And this is sophisticated machinery, so it's not an easy thing to do. Well, again, I researched troubleshooting processes, put together a process with good feedback on, what are good steps with the right amount of detail that's going to be practical and effective. And then I worked with the line and we got some equipment that had just been retired and we put bugs into it so that after they were instructed on how to do this process, they were going to go solve bugs on real equipment that was retired using the process. And we upped the ante. We said, you got to use the process in order to be certified, of passing this class. Now, we don't care if you fix the bug or not, but you just follow the steps. And I got to tell you, they freaked out. There was about 70 of them. I was getting dirty looks in the parking lot. I can appreciate it. They felt scared. But once we got going and the process made sense and they got in that room to troubleshoot those bugs, they loved it. We had an expert instructor, so they got good feedback on their troubleshooting and they were able to solve the bugs. And, they're technicians. They like doing this kind of stuff. So they would practice on those bugs until they could follow the process. And again, if I'd have just taught them, here's the process, okay, back to work, go use the process. Really, come on, nothing would have changed. But man, that practice with the feedback, try it again. You skip this step. When you split the space in two, did you think about splitting it this way? Oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. They could do it. And, they were coming to me saying, hey, I already passed the certification, but I want to practice on the bugs more. So that was just, a great design. And it speaks to also making the practice as close to real life work as you can. And this was very close. It was, real equipment. So that was all part of our equipping this revolutionary approach of having production take ownership of high-tech manufacturing lines. Another example involves the same Fortune 50 company, and I was in charge of marketing, learning, and development. We had 5,000 marketing professionals spread around the globe. And the problem was we had smart, well-intentioned, hardworking marketing professionals without any marketing education or background. The bias was, anyone could do marketing. We brought in a external learning assessment, an objective test, not a self-rate, an objective test. And I was able to show these VPs of our different organizations, marketing organizations, look, you guys are weak in this, you're weak here, you're weak there. And it was a tough pill to swallow, but 11 of the 12 got on board. And 3 of the big needs were value-based pricing, the technology adoption lifestyle marketing plan, and marketing profitability. Now, for the first 2, we had workshops we would come in and we would only train intact teams. And we would teach them, here's value-based pricing versus cost-plus pricing. But then we had templates and workbooks, and over the 2 days, they would actually make their value-based pricing plan for their products in real time and get feedback from the instructor and input from other people on, marketing information. And at the end of the workshop, they had the plan done. They not only knew what it was, they could not only talk about it, they could make the plan. And their leaders would come back to me and say, we're going to save 30 million this year. Oh my goodness. We were going to drop prices huge to reach the new low-cost competitor, but realized we've got the brand name. We were going to give up $90 million of revenue just to say, because we had to meet their price. That's a pretty good return on a 2-day, $10,000 marketing course, right? It was the same thing with the technology adoption life cycle. At each different stage, when you introduce a new product, and it goes through different phases, early adopters, visionaries, the main market, you have to market your communication, your price, your promotion, your product differently at each stage. Again, we didn't just teach people this framework. They came with their data and they created their plan in the workshop with feedback from our world-class expert. When they left, they had a plan. And again, they would tell us, we're going to make $30 million more this year. That's the power of focusing on what do people need to do and give them practice with feedback doing it. The third example was marketing profitability. This was tools and concepts put together by a Dr. Roger Best. His book is in, like 300 marketing grad schools. And again, we knew we were really weak on these tools. And it was amazing. This was just when Zoom it wasn't even Zoom, but the virtual classroom came out. And we were like, we got 5,000 people around the world. We can't wait and send Dr. Roger Best on, 300, 400 workshops around the world. So we had a 6-week program, 1 hour a week. He would get on there, go over one of the major tools, explain what it was, why it was important, how it worked, work an example, give the assignment, download the spreadsheets that we've talked about, use it, send me your questions. We'll take, I'll get back to you and then we'll go on to the next tool next week. By the 6th week, we had 1,000 people coming. And when we asked afterwards, our evaluation, we didn't just ask, how did you like the instructor? We said, will this make a difference? If so, what? And give us an example. We had over cumulatively $70 million increase in revenue and profit. This was for 6 virtual 1-hour sessions. When you know what people need to do, and you tell them how to do it, but then you give them practice with feedback, it changes everything. At one point in my career, I put in a learning and development function for a global mid-sized biotech company. And in our needs assessment, it turned out that the production organization had no training, very hit or miss, unorganized, structured, centralized training. And so we put together a production training organization, created 2 positions. We made 2 great hires. And that first week, we looked at the data for production and saw the biggest errors that were costing the most money. We analyzed them to understand which ones could be fixed by training. And within 3 weeks, we had trained the entire organization across our different countries on how to do this particular issue correctly. It was virtual training. And within that first month, they made changes that were going to save us $1 million a year in production error and waste. Again, what do people need to do, and show them how to do that? And in this case, we didn't necessarily give them practice. We told them how to do it and had their supervisors make sure they were doing it right. And, you know, the results were tremendous. So that was very exciting. Another situation with that company was in terms of management training. The supervisors and frontline and middle managers, it became clear talking around the organization, needed support on handling difficult conversations, giving feedback, holding people accountable, performance reviews, resolving conflicts. So I researched a lot of programs. I went with Crucial Conversations, you may have heard, by Vital Smarts. Outstanding program, research-based, tremendous business impact. And after I got certified as an instructor, I redesigned the course and changed it from 90% instruction about how to resolve conflict. Here's what the steps are. Here's case studies. Here's an example. It was 90% instructional content, 10% token role plays at the end. And I switched it. So it was like 10% instruction, 90% role plays. There were 4 skills, created like 8 to 10 role plays for each skill that were customized for each department. And I reduced the class time from 16 hours to 12 hours. And, when we worked through that, it got a little tedious at times. We were grinding, Okay, let's do this role play again. The 4 steps of conflict resolution, or each of those steps, right? Okay, then we'd have someone do it up front and everyone give feedback on what they missed. But I'll tell you what, when they left that class after a day and a half, they could actually do it in real life. They would call me the next day. I got back to the factory floor. There was a huge blow up. Normally I would have lost my cool, but I used the steps and it worked. I had one woman tell me, for the first time in the last 6 months, my teenage daughter and I got through the night without yelling at each other. Now, again, I've taken a lot of great conflict resolution classes, 2 days, fabulous tools, 90% instruction, 10% role play. 2 weeks after the class, I couldn't tell you what the steps were. Now, how can I possibly execute a difficult conflict resolution conversation where the stakes are high, emotions are strong, and opinions are different if I can't even list the steps? And certainly, even if I can list the steps, how am I going to remember them and actually do them in a live conversation with people, bouncing off the walls and everything? But when we did that course at this company, they could do it because they practiced and gotten feedback until they could do it. It was internalized. And when it came time to do it, they weren't trying to remember the steps. They knew the steps. So again, we identified what they had to do and we practiced it and gave them feedback till they could do it. And not only were these great personal anecdotes about, impact, but that people would also get back to me, okay, we had this long-standing business issue, conflict between 2 departments and trying to read each other's mind and over-ordering to be careful. And we solved that and we cut waste. So there was real business impact. The global HR manager and VP of change management told me, you changed our culture, all because we focused on what we had to do, and then we let them practice and give them feedback till they could do it. With that same company, 1,000 people across 3 countries, family-owned business for 70 years, we went through a very difficult reduction in force. Now you can imagine the trauma associated with this event. And I was charged with teaching our leadership team and managers how to manage the change. So again, I looked at a lot of great tools. And again, Vital Smarts with the research base had a great program and approach. It was in their book Influencer. And I also used Managing Transitions, a classic on the book on helping people facilitate the inward emotional journey of going through change. And when I did the workshops with our leaders, I would give them the framework. But then again, like for influencers, it's about the performance, the activity. I had a workbook template and said, okay, this is the first thing you need to do. Figure out what are the vital behaviors you need the people in your organization to do. So example, for my boss, he said, I need everyone to be looking out and saying, if you notice something not getting done to support our customers, say something or do something. That is the one behavior we need to drive. Okay. So he writes that down in his template, right? And we go through this whole process about how you're going to enable that and make sure that behavior happens. Same thing we talked about. Here's how you facilitate people going through these different phases emotionally. So at the end of 2 hours, this was only a 2-hour workshop, they all left with a blueprint, their plan for managing change the day those RAF notices got sent out and were executed. What was the result? Again, my boss, the global HR manager, told me I've been in this business, HR, for over 30 years. I've been through a lot of RIFs, led a lot of RIFs. I have never seen a RIF executed so well, especially in terms of business continuity. We didn't miss a beat in terms of production, fulfilling orders, all of our marketing, sales, etc. I mean, I hope I'm not being obnoxious, but we identified what people needed to do and we had them do it, practice, put their plan together, get feedback on it, and then they went out and did it, and it worked. Another example is with a Fortune 50 company I also had the pleasure of working with for a number of years. And I was in the sales training function. I was, on the leadership team. And we had about 25 trainers supporting 700 to 800 salespeople. And when I joined the organization, we were order takers who did product training. And by product training, I mean, here's the new health insurance plans, here's the copays, et cetera, et cetera. And sales leaders would come to us and say, oh, I need training on this, I need training on this product. And we would trot out and do our virtual classroom training. And I went to our leadership team. I said, we need to be performance consultants, not order takers. We need to be able to help these sales organizations understand what their real training needs are and to understand when they come to us with a training need, maybe training isn't the solution to what they're dealing with. So there's just great tools on this about how to become a performance consultant, a trusted advisor, if you will, instead of an order taker. So I put together self-paced training on here's the framework, the mindset, the reason why, the benefits, how to do it, just the basic information that they needed to know to understand what and why. And then I had identified 3 conversations that our trainers have with sales leaders that are crucial. One was the request, when the manager or sales leader comes and requests a certain type of training. And for that conversation, I said, here's the questions you need to ask. Is it a motivation issue? Is it a process issue, etc.? Here's the information you need to share about different types of training if it does seem like it's a training solution. And here's the soft skills you need to use. Active listening, using we instead of I. We had identified crucial soft skills to use to help facilitate that conversation. The other 2 conversations were, okay, so if we'd agreed to do a training engagement, here's what I need from you. We're kind of partners. You need something from me. I need you to make sure the organization knows about the training, make sure they show up, make sure the managers know about it and are going to reinforce it when they're back on the job. I need access to the training environment for the database, whatever it was, right? And same thing. And the other conversation was the debrief after the course and the evaluation results were in. And for those conversations also, we talked about what do you need to say? What do you need to ask? And how do you need to do it? What are the soft skills to use? Well, then what I did was created about 7 role plays, and each of our trainers would role play with me, and I had a matrix that evaluated them on all that criteria on that rubric. And when they got 85% or higher, they were passed. If not, they were in practice status until they got it. So they reached the standard. And some of them got it the first or second time. Some of them got it the 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th time. But the point was they could actually do it. When they finished the program, they could do it. And that's what I really encourage and want to challenge us all to. When they leave your program, they should be able to do it. So anyway, so that was great. Okay, they were all certified. They all showed they could do it. Well, I'll tell you what, within about 5 weeks, a couple of our trainers come back and say, the business we support, this $1 billion business that's been declining in revenue for a couple years, we did what you taught us. This president of this company keeps coming to us saying, I need more sales training. Sales are down. They need to be trained. Well, we investigated. It turned out when we sell the products, the implementation for clients is so painful and they complain so much to their salesperson, and the salesperson needs to be involved so long to make sure it gets fixed. The salespeople aren't even trying to sell it. Again, that was some hard feedback, but to the president's credit, he took it, he confirmed it, he fixed the processes, and 5 months later, revenue turned around and started going up. So I didn't just teach them how to performance consult. I gave them practice with feedback so they could do what they needed to do. And it made a huge difference. I was requested to make this available to the larger L&D organization with a few hundred trainers. And I did. And we ended up putting over 100 people through the program. The other thing at that Fortune 50 health insurance company that helps bear out this emphasis that I'm talking about, this approach, was we had a sales certification program. Sales was underperforming, so let's certify they can do what they need to do, and that's going to fix everything. And the first year, the program had 4 belt levels. For each belt level, there was 4 or 5 required courses, and take 2 or 3 of these electives, and then you go to the next belt. This encompassed 2, 3 to 4 day face-to-face conferences. So we had 3 across different parts of the country twice a year. It was complex trying to understand where everybody else was with their belts. It took a lot of time for salespeople to do all the training, and it cost a lot of money for all that travel. And at the end of the year, actual sales didn't move the needle at all. So my director came to me and said, will you fix this? We need a sales certification program that works. So what I did was just back to the basics. What do they need to do? And I asked the business, what are the 2 or 3 products that are going to be the most important for you to reach your business goals, your revenue and profit? Okay. What are the 2 skills that are going to make the biggest difference? And then we, would collaborate that investigation. For example, one of them was delivering the value proposition. And, the other one may be overcoming objections. Okay. So here was the new sales certification program. You need to, 1, get certified that you can deliver the value prop and overcome the standard objections for these 2 or 3 products. Now, if you need to learn about those products and what the objections are that you overcome and how, here's an e-learning course. Here's someone talking about it on video. Here's a live virtual class. Here's a document. If you need it, you go learn it however we want. Now, this is adult learning theory principle, right? Let people learn the way they want to learn. Now, it's a principle that is discussed and extolled, but rarely practiced in my experience. Okay. So let's say you've got the knowledge you need. Now you're going to practice delivering the value prop and get feedback, and practice overcoming objections and get feedback if you want and need to practice. And you can practice with one of our trainers one-on-one. You can practice with your peers. You can practice in a group setting. We'll have virtual classes with 5 people practicing together and an instructor. We'll do live sessions. Again, here's a whole host of ways. You can just practice on your own in the mirror. Practice with your manager. We don't care how you practice. We don't care if you practice. Just by this date, you're going to need to show you can do it according to our rubric and standard. And that will be something you'll do with someone who's certified to evaluate you. No 3 or 4 day face-to-face conferences we're flying people to twice a year. No 4 belt levels with all these different required classes and take 3 of the 4 electives and tracking all that. We're just going to let you be adults, give you the resources you need, and then you step up and show us you can do it by the certain date, or you're going to have to, deal with your manager. I'll tell you what, when I pitched that to the L&D, my director, and they loved it. and they couldn't wait to take it to the sales leaders. Now, I wish I could give you more results from that. I moved on from that organization at that time, but just just try to wrap your head around how powerful this is. What do they have to do? Give them practice and feedback with it. If we do that, we are going to thrill our sponsors and our clients, and we're going to drive crazy business results, and we're going to feel really good about it too. So let's head this direction and make a great difference.